Hey guys, it's Steve for CollectorMania. I'm here doing a deck tech in our series of 32. This is now we're moving on to Selesnya. The commander I have for this color pie is Selvala, Explorer Returned. She's a pretty cool commander, great for ramping up, making a ton of mana. Also really good for card draw. I know it does help your opponents out a little bit most of the time. It doesn't end up mattering too much unless you're playing against like super heavy control decks or something like that. She's 3 costs, which is really nice for commanders in my opinion. So anyway, really cool card. Let's move on to our deck here. We've got 2 Planeswalkers. We've got Garruk, Primal Hunter. This guy's really just good for, I mainly use him for drawing a bunch of cards. He comes down late, and then when you have like a 10-10, draws you a full hand of cards. He can be used early to make some tokens. Ultimate isn't bad either. You know, a bunch of 6/6 worms is always good. Then we've got Nyssa World Breaker. I mainly use her for her untap up to 4 target forest ability. Just another mana ramp. You'll see in this deck there's a lot of untap theme as far as lands go. I just, like making as much mana as I can, really. Okay, moving on to our creatures here. We've got a little bit of a mana dork. We've got Avacyn's Pilgrim, really good for, especially, I find myself sometimes just drawing my forests. This guy can be, a little bit of a helpful guy to find in the top decks. So yeah, being able to make white mana just to get Selvala out there. Then we've got Bird's Paradise, of course, a standard green, EDH staple. And then we've got a newer kind of creature. This is Ovia Pashiri. I think I'm saying that right, I hope. She's great for making tokens, really good at making giant tokens later on in the game. I don't know. It's I've played a few games with her. She's pretty cool. It's definitely new from Kaladesh, I believe she was. And then we've got Dustwatch Recruiter. Being able to pay the 3 and not tap him, so you can do it pretty much as many times as you want to, is really cool. Especially with the amount of mana that you can generate with Selvala. So being able to look, through your deck and find creatures that you need, really awesome card. Plus, sometimes he flips over and becomes a little bit stronger. He's okay on the other side. And then up from that we've got Gyre Sage. Obviously there's a lot of big creatures in this deck, so being able to play them in succession and evolve this card, making more and more mana, is great. I've got a little bit of artifact and enchantment removal. I would say probably a green-white staple for sure, Qasali Pridemage. Not only does it do that removal aspect, but it also can buff like a single attacker if you needed to, which is pretty cool. And then we've got Steve, as many people call him, Sakura Trivelder. I get plenty of flack in the store about this. People are always talking about how they're going to sacrifice me to find a land. So he's pretty cool. Our green staple, really. On from that, we've got Seeker of the Skybreak. This is really just a way to use a lot of our tap creatures a second time. Works really great with Selvala, of course, but also works with many of the other creatures in the deck. And you'll see a few of these in here. Then we've got Selfless Spirit to protect our team. Voice of Resurgence to kind of protect ourselves against those control decks. Plus, when it dies, it really isn't too bad. You get that token regardless, and then you've got this thing that just keeps growing and growing and growing until somebody deals with it. Of course, some recursion. We've got Eternal Witness, one of my favorite green cards of all time. I'm pretty sure pretty much everybody's favorite green card of all time. And then we've got Kitchen Finks, a little bit of life gain. I like this card a lot because it's a great early blocker, especially if somebody's playing with, like a Voltron commander. A lot of people, will just target, whoever they want, and if you become that target, it's really great to have something that has persist and, can come back and block again. Then we've got Knight of the Reliquary, able to find a few of our non-basic lands in the deck. There's quite a few, as you'll see. Also just kind of scales with the amount of lands that go into the graveyard, stuff like that. So pretty cool card. Then we've got Mangara, a little bit more permanent removal. We'll exile it. Pretty cool card. And then we've got Nyssa, Vastwood Seer. A little bit of mana ramp. Well, not mana ramp, but mana find. Also, when she flips over to her Planeswalker side, she's great. Her plus ability is amazing. Pretty much, I love this card. Then we've got the other Selvala in the deck. This card is ridiculous. I cannot talk enough about it. My wife actually has a mono green Selvala deck that she put together herself, it is ridiculous. But this card in this deck shines like no other. It if she was green-white, she'd be the commander. I'll tell you that. Then a little bit more mana ramp. We've got a Wood Elves. Moving on to some of our bigger creatures here, we've got an Angel of Finality. There's a lot of graveyard decks in our meta, so this card definitely is super useful. Shutting down, you know, like with Gerard. Gerard's a really big one around here. That card's insane. So this helps a lot. And then we've got another kind of untapped guy. This guy, you have to pay for it, but it also comes with a whole lot of other things that can untap, like artifacts, lands, all kinds of other stuff. So pretty cool card. Then we've got an Emiria Angel. A lot of ramp in this deck, of course, so sometimes this can generate a ton of tokens. Little flyers are always good. We've got Restoration Angel. There's quite a few ETBs, so she definitely becomes useful. She's also just great as like a combat trick sometimes, you know. Pretty cool card. Then we've got Tristani. Great way to gain a whole bunch of life and then populate a few of the tokens that you make. Good with Voice of Resurgence, of course. Whitley Fleesh, buff the whole team. Plus, if anybody's playing discard, that's always a nice surprise. Especially with Amonkhet focusing so much on discard, I plan on seeing a little bit more of that in our meta. And then we've got Ant Queen, a great token generator. I love this card. Being able to pay 2 and make a chump blocker, or just pay like 10 mana at the end of somebody's turn, and then have 5 creatures to swing out with the next turn is great, especially if you can buff them somehow. Some more removal. We've got an Archon of Justice. This guy oftentimes just comes out and sits on the battlefield forever because nobody wants to swing into him. No one wants to try and, you know, kill him or anything like that, so just a great card. I've got a card draw engine, Garrett's Pack Leader. Really good at drawing cards late game when you get into your bigger creatures. Juniper Order Ranger. This guy's crazy. He'll make all your guys bigger. I usually run him in more +1/+1 counter heavy decks, but this, I think he just works in here. You know, just buffing everything and anything, plus getting ginormous himself. Some more mana ramp. We've got Karametra. This card, I think, was originally the commander of this deck a long time ago until Selvala came out, and it's amazing. It's runs into that god problem where, you know, sometimes you need it to be a creature and of course it's not, but you know, when it is a creature, having a 6/7 indestructible swinging at you is great. You know, being able to attack everybody with it is amazing. Plus the benefit of grabbing lands every time you play a creature is ridiculous. And we got a little bit of recursion again. We've got a Karmic Guide, just grabs creature, puts it right on the battlefield, then you can pay the echo if you want. Great with not Restoration Angel, but yeah, Conjurer's Closet, that's the one I'm thinking of. Then we've got Dragon Lord Dramoka. This is great against all your friends that like playing control. You put this down and it pretty much shuts them up for your turn. I probably should pick up a Grand Abolisher for this deck now that I think about it. That'd be a good idea. Good include. Then we've got our Craterhoof for the deck, which is the Pathbreaker Ibex. I'd love to have Craterhoof in every deck that I have, but they're pretty pricey, so sometimes I have to kind of go to a little bit more budget option. Pathbreaker Ibex is definitely a win con. It can get you a win pretty quick. The downside is, of course, you have to have it on the board for an entire turn. But, you know, there's definitely ways to get around it with, like, Concord and Crossroads and stuff like that. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of them, but this card is insane. And then we've got a Rampaging Balos, able to make you a ton of tokens. Soul the Harvest, card draw engine. Sun Titan, Recursion, especially for a lot of our early guys like Qasali Pride Mage and stuff like that. Thunderfoot Baloth, Lieutenant ability is amazing. Giving, let's see, I think it's your entire team +2/+2 in trample. That's crazy. Yeah, that's insane. This card coming out is almost like having a Pathbreaker Ibex. Not as good, but still pretty good. Then we've got a card that I've talked about before, but I absolutely love, Angel of Serenity. Great for removal, great for recursion, pretty much just a great card all around. Moving on from that, we've got the white version of Cyclonic Rift, in my opinion, which is Angel of the Dire Hour. This can definitely hose your opponents over when they least expect it. And they are not looking for a 7-cost you know, thing to come down from a green-white deck. And when it hits the table, it's usually pretty crazy and a hoot, because you know you got them. And then we've got another recursion engine, Emiria Shepherd. I recently actually got to do something crazy with this. I didn't even realize it was a thing, but this guy and Sakura Tribe Elder is just ridiculous together. Basically, you just sacrifice the Sakura Tribe Elder, go and find a plains from your deck, put the Sakura Tribe Elder back into the play, and then sack him again. You can get every plains out of your deck that way. It's insane. And then moving on from that, we've got Ulamog, the Infinite Gyre. Great for just well, it's not an ETB, but on cast trigger removal, and then obviously a giant indestructible creature. The main reason he's in here is for the reshuffle, though. There's not any other way to do it, and we do have a few mill decks in here, or in the meta, so this guy definitely becomes useful. And then we've got our big baddie, World Spine Worm. I think I've played this guy like once, but when he hits the table, he's great. You know, when he dies, he turns into 5 worms and then goes back into the library to find again, so he's great. Okay, moving on from our creatures, we've got our enchantments. First up is Sylvan Library, obviously a great way to draw in green. I don't really mind paying a whole lot of life, especially with like things like Selvala herself and Tristani. It usually works out pretty well. I can usually just pay 8 pretty much every time, so it doesn't matter. And then we've got a little bit of Vigilance. We've got an Always Watching, buffs the team of course, but the main thing is the Vigilance, just being able to keep everybody up as blockers and attackers. Awesome. Then we've got Asceticism, a little bit of protection for our creatures, plus Regenerate of course. Then we've got Lurking Predators, of course, as you've seen. There's a ton of huge creatures in this deck, so that helps a lot, getting those out a little bit quicker. Moving on from that, we've got a Primeval Bounty. Like I said earlier, we play a lot of lands in this deck, so that comes in handy. Plus, it triggers off creatures, and everything that you play, it does something. So, just an awesome enchantment to stick late game. And then we've got a Cloudstone Curio. As I said before, there's a lot of ETBs in this deck, and this definitely helps out with that. Plus, you know, sometimes if you're playing like your Selesnya Sanctuary or something like that, you can play this, bounce a land, and then have it to play, you know, later or anything like that, stuff like that. So Cloudstone Curio, cool card. Then we've got another card draw engine, Lifecrafter's Bestiary. The scry at the beginning of the turn is actually really what I like this card for, but the draw is nice too. And then we've got Panharmonicron, once again with the ETBs, just awesome card. I've got Conjurer's Closet, ETBs again. And that's our artifacts. Moving on from that, we'll get into our instant speed spells. We've got a few removal spells in here, of course. We've got Swords to Plowshares, a way to defend ourselves with Arachnogenesis, another removal spell, Beast Within, and then a way to kind of protect your team once again. We've got an Eerie Interlude. This card's great. It definitely can be another hoser where like somebody goes for Wrath of God and then all of a sudden you're just like, oh, I'll just Eerie Interlude and just keep all my creatures, thank you. Great against Terminus too, that's where I really like it. Then we've got Crow's Grip, a little bit more artifact and enchantment removal. That's the end of our instance. We're moving on to sorceries here. A little bit of ramp up front. We've got a Farseek. We've got a Cultivate, Explosive Vegetation, and then some card draw. We've got a Harmonize, and some more card draw. We've got a Shamanic Revelation. I always try and say that wrong. This is not only a way to draw cards, but another way to gain a little bit of life if you've been using your Sylvan Library a whole lot. Another one of my favorite cards, which I think I've talked about this several times already, again, is Seasons Past, and this card is insane. I recommend any EDH player to pick up as many copies of this as they can, especially right now while it's cheap, because this card's bonkers. Then we've got Azuri's Predation, which is kind of a way to do a board wipe, really just a way to make a whole bunch of tokens. Really cool card, really expensive, but this deck can swing the costs. That's the good thing about it. Okay, and then we're into our lands here. So first up, we've got an Ash Barrens. A lot of people ask me why I have this in here. Really, once again, like I said, I've had that problem where I've been stuck on like forests or plains forever. Being able to just cycle this and find whatever you need is great. There's not really any need for the colorless mana, although I may get an Eldrazi Displacer for this at some point, so there might be even more of a reason to keep it in. Just a great card, though. Some duels. We got Canopy Vista. Sorry, I got a frog caught in my throat there. Then we've got a Command Tower. one of the new dual lands, Fortified Village. A way to buff your entire team, Gavany Township. This card's great, especially with the amount of mana this deck generates. Once again, just being able to buff your entire team at the end of somebody's turn is amazing, especially with the amount of tokens we have. And then moving on to one of my favorite utility lands, Core Haven. I will put this card in pretty much any deck that I can. It is amazing. I know it's not Maze of Ith, but at least it taps for mana. Like, there's the trade-off there. It's ridiculously good. And then we've got a Crozen Verge, great for finding some lands from your library. Razorverge Thicket, fast land. Utility land, Reliquary Tower. We can have a big hand in this deck, surprisingly. Selesnya Sanctuary, bounce land. And then we've got Stirring Wildwood, you know, a man land. Sometimes it becomes important, especially if like somebody board wipes to save themselves and don't realize that you have that, and then you can just swing at them with this and kill them. Sungrass Prairie. I love that they put these in the new Commander products. They're great. The artwork on them is amazing. I really wish we had the full cycle, but what can you do? And then we've got a Sun Petal Grove, Temple of Plenty, a little bit of scry action. Temple of the False God, a little bit of ramp. Wooded Bastion. I believe the rest are just forests and plains. Yeah. So anyway, that's Selvala. I hope you've enjoyed this deck. Of course, you know, like, comment, let us know what we're doing right. Let us know what you'd like to see in the future. I think next time we're probably going to move on to either Rakdos or Dimir. I'm still kind of bouncing around with that, but we'll see what comes up. I hope it's Rakdos, to be honest, because I love my Rakdos deck. But anyway, besides the point. So anyway, we'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching, and yeah, have a good day.